All right, more than likely it's win or go home this week. So let's hit that waiver wire one more time. Hey, what's going on, everybody? Jake, Fantasy Headliners. Welcome to Week 16. For a lot of you guys, your fantasy championships, if you were so lucky as to make it and survive whatever you want to call the past few weeks. That was like fanpocalypse, whatever you want to call it. It's been horrible for a couple weeks here for a lot of people. A lot of studs that we've counted on all year long have been struggling the past couple weeks, and it's really hurt a lot of fantasy football teams out there. But hey, whether you're still playing the spoiler or you're in it for the fantasy championship, maybe you still play next week. Maybe you're in a league that goes 17 weeks. If that's the case, I'll be here again next week. However, I want to take this moment real quick. If this is your final week in your season, I wanted to take a second to thank all you guys for a great and wonderful fantasy football season. I greatly appreciate your support, and I've had a ton of fun this season. However, just because your season may be over this week, don't go unsubscribing and unchecking the bell. I have a ton of stuff planned for 2019. A draft guide will be coming out. I'll be going to the NFL Combine, trying to get to the NFL Draft, the National Fantasy Football Convention, the Pro Bowl. There's a lot of things coming up down the pipe, and I may already have one of the top industry experts for fantasy baseball getting ready to drop a little bit of knowledge to help you guys out in some of your drafts and upcoming fantasy baseball questions. Tons of stuff coming right now in 2019, so don't go anywhere. It's going to be great. However, this is still Week 16. This is a very important week. Let's hit the waiver wire. There's a few names out there that could help you this late in the season. All right, in case you're still streaming quarterbacks, maybe you're one of these teams that has just been streaming every single week trying to get that great matchup. And if you're looking for it again, there's still a couple options out there that are less than 50% owned. First one, the dude on the wall. And I've talked about him a lot. Baker Mayfield is still owned in less than 50% of leagues, and he has a great matchup in Week 16. He's facing the Cincinnati Bengals at home. The same Cincinnati Bengals team which he faced in Week 12, where he threw for 258 passing yards and 4 touchdowns. He obliterated this defense the last time they played, and really Cincinnati doesn't have anything to play for anymore this season anyway. The Browns, every single week, they're proving a point to not only themselves, but to the other people that they can win football games. It's been exciting to watch. The offense has improved. Baker's been struggling somewhat as of late with getting those big numbers. Hasn't had a huge game the past 2 weeks, but is still a very solid starting quarterback. And if you're streaming, he's a great option here for Week 16. All right, the other streaming option this week is going to be another guy, which I've talked about here for the past few weeks also. It's Josh Allen of the Buffalo Bills. Ending up the season with a Buffalo Bill. Love it. Josh Allen, in case you haven't noticed, over the past 4 weeks, has been the number 1 quarterback in fantasy football. That's how crazy this season has been. However, you may be able to ride that craziness one more week. He's only owned right now in 31% of leagues, has a matchup in New England this week. We already know what he can do with his legs, right? He has rushing touchdowns 3 out of his last 4 games. 3 of those games, he averaged over 100 yards. Didn't really utilize that portion of his game last week against Detroit. Only 9 carries for 16 yards, but it was a touchdown scramble. He has that huge upside, and he's slowly starting to throw the ball more and more. He's gone over 200 passing yards, 3 straight games, 3 touchdowns in those 3 games. Definitely a solid option. Week 16, you don't have anybody else available. Josh Allen is somebody who could actually win you a fantasy football championship. And about, 8-10 weeks ago, you would have thought I was absolutely crazy for saying that. All right, moving on to running backs. First one, Elijah McGuire of the New York Jets. Right now only owned in 32% of leagues, and he's somebody who's getting a lot of volume lately. Not a whole lot of options anymore in the backfield for the Jets. Elijah McGuire has had over 20 touches his past 2 weeks. Both of those weeks, double-digit fantasy points. Right now averaging 15 fantasy points over his last 2 games. Now, he gets the Green Bay Packers. Is that like one of those matchups you can't wait to throw him in your lineup? No, not really. But with all the injuries and all the inconsistencies, you could do worse than Elijah McGuire. He's not a great play. He's a decent play here for Week 16. But if nothing else, take a look at your opponent's lineup. Do they need a running back? If they do, and Elijah McGuire is out there and there are no better options, scoop him up just to block your opponent. The last thing you would want is for him to scoop up Elijah McGuire last minute and end up beating you with him. You got to play the game on both sides, your opponent's team and your team. Make sure you're paying attention to that stuff. Next up could be a big one. Jamal Williams of the Green Bay Packers, only owned in just over 11% of leagues right now, and he could be, we don't know yet, the starting running back for the Green Bay Packers this week in a great matchup against the New York Jets. We don't know about Aaron Jones yet. There is a chance that he misses this week. It hasn't really been determined. We'll need to follow the practice reports, follow the injury reports, try to see what information we can grab. But as of right now, today, at the time of this recording, the starting running back and getting the bulk of the work for the Green Bay Packers is Jamal Williams. Definitely somebody who needs to be added if you're looking for a running back. Last week, after Aaron Jones went out, 12 carries, 55 yards, and a touchdown, added in another 4 receptions for 43. In this case, there's really just no other options in Green Bay. If he's the starting running back, he's going to see a lot of touches, and that could really help you out here week 16 if you're hurting and struggling for a running back. All right, another possible speculative add, John Kelly of the Los Angeles Rams. I've spoken about him the last couple weeks as far as handcuffs on this show, and then everybody kind of had their, pucker up this past weekend when Todd Gurley went out. Now, what were to happen if Todd Gurley were to miss this week? Now, reports are coming out saying it's just swelling and that he could be fine. But they're facing the Arizona Cardinals, one of the worst teams in the NFL. As of right now, they're the number 1 pick in the NFL draft. They are a horrible team. Now, Los Angeles does need to get their offense back on track. They are struggling. But are they going to risk their postseason by throwing Todd Gurley out there late in ball games, giving them all that extra work to beat the Arizona Cardinals? I don't know about that. I'm adding John Kelly everywhere I can. There's a real chance that they could sit Todd Gurley this week. We just won't know for a few more days. Add him, pick him up, stash him, block him, whatever you got to do. There's a chance that he could see some huge volumes against one of the worst run defenses in football here this week. All right, another guy getting a whole lot of opportunity here real late in the season, Ballage of the Miami Dolphins, a really talented rookie who really didn't get much opportunity this season. Now, with Frank Gore hurt and out of the picture, the bulk of those carries could be going towards Ballage. How did he handle them last week? Pretty well. 12 carries, 123 yards and a touchdown, and added in 1 catch for -2 yards. So, unless you're in a PPR league, he's not much of a pass-catching option. That's still going to be more Kenyon Drake. However, right now, Ballage is somebody who could get close to 15 carries this week. The problem is he's facing the Jacksonville Jaguars, one of the top run defenses in football. You just never know which Jaguars defense is going to show up. The kid still has an opportunity, and there are worse options than Ballage out there. If he's available in your league, scoop him up, stash him on your bench. If nothing else, you have him sitting there and nobody else can use him against you. All right, moving on to wide receiver. And I think this guy's been on this show for like 3 or 4 weeks. People still don't trust Dante Pettis of the San Francisco 49ers. And I really don't understand why. He's been one of the top fantasy wide receivers over the last 4 weeks. A lot of people, I think, look at his box score every week and they kind of just write it off as a fluke. Well, how many times in a row does he have to do it for it not to be a fluke anymore? Right now, he has 4 touchdowns in his last 4 games, only gone over 100 yards once, but the touchdown upside is huge in that offense. He's the number 1 target, not named George Kittle there in San Francisco, and now they get the Chicago Bears. Tough matchup. Not going to be able to run much against the Bears. Could the passing game get going? Can Dante Pettis get an opportunity? That's entirely possible playing at home in San Francisco. Dante Pettis is still a solid flex play week in and week out, regardless of the matchup, just due to the volume that he's seen here in the past few weeks. All right, next up is Westbrook, right now only owned in 33% of leagues, and he's been pretty solid here down the stretch. Is he one of these guys that I'm super pumped to pick up off the waiver wire and throw right in my starting lineup? Not unless I'm in dire need. They do play in Miami against the Dolphins, a decent matchup, but a limited ceiling due to that offense in Jacksonville. He's still, like I said, has double-digit fantasy points 3 out of his last 4 games. He has somewhat of a safe floor. Over these past 4 weeks, he's averaging right around 13 points a game. Not great, not horrible. Really depends on the type of league you're in and how desperate you are for a flex play. But Westbrook does have some value this week, and like I said, only owned in 33% of leagues right now. Josh Reynolds next up on the list, and he's somebody who's owned in 40% of leagues, so he's getting really close to that 50% threshold. But the guy saw crazy targets this past week. 12 targets went his way. Now, he only turned it into 5 receptions but had 70 yards, but a lot of red zone targets. Now, I know I've talked about the Rams a few times here, and that offense really needs to start turning things around. Jared Goff has reverted to Jared Goff of like 2 years ago. He doesn't look that great. However, as much as I don't trust in the maturation of Jared Goff, I do trust Sean McVay to right that ship and get that offense turned back around to what they were closer to the first half of the season. Josh Reynolds has a matchup against the Arizona Cardinals. Now, Patrick Peterson is there, but he won't be on Josh Reynolds. With the amount of red zone work that he gets in the weaker matchup against these Arizona Cardinals, Josh Reynolds could have a huge fantasy football day if you're looking for a flex play this week. Like I said, only owned 40% of leagues. He may be available out there, and he's a decent play here for Week 16. The world must be coming to the apocalypse has to be like right around the corner. It has to be. We're talking about another Buffalo Bill. This late in the season? Really? The Bills? I never expected this, or especially how they started the season. But we're going to talk about Robert Foster. And a lot of you guys heard me say Robert Foster and said, who the hell is that guy? Exactly. Robert Foster. Nobody really knows who he is still. However, in his last 5 games, he's gone over 100 yards in 3 of them. And in his 4th game, really just missed it by 6 yards, where he had 94 yards. The guy has double-digit fantasy points 4 out of his last 5 games. He's the top target of Josh Allen. Great game this past week. Only 4 catches, had 108 yards. Now, I had Josh Allen as a solid pickup for the quarterback position because of a matchup against the Patriots in which may force him to throw the ball. Robert Foster is going to be his main target. He's not a bad play. Now, do you really want to throw a Buffalo Bill or 2 of them into your lineup on Championship Sunday? Probably not. But if you're desperate for a wide receiver, the guy's had a great stretch of football here. He's playing great, and he's a decent option here this week. Deshaun Hamilton is next, and a lot of people refer to him as Bayshawn, but I'm not that type of guy, so I'm sticking with Deshaun. He's had a solid couple of games since we lost Emmanuel Sanders. These past 2 games, 7 catches in each game, right around 40-some yards. So unless you're in a PPR league, really kind of has a limited ceiling. Now, PPR league, 7 catches a week, right around those 40 to 50 yards, gives you a solid fantasy floor, right about 12 to 15 fantasy points a week. Not bad if you're looking for somebody this late in the season off the waiver wire. Decent matchup going to Oakland, facing the Oakland Raiders defense. Not somebody who I'm overly pumped to throw right into my lineup, but he does have upside, and there is that potential for touchdowns in this offense. The problem is they're just not consistent in Denver, and it kind of limits the amount of upside that Deshaun Hamilton has. However, PPR leagues, multiple flex leagues, deeper leagues, 12 teams or larger, Deshaun Hamilton is still a great play here for Week 16, and he's highly available, only owned in 24% of leagues right now. All right, let's talk about the breakout game that was Mike Williams. Now, I said in my start-sit video last week from Mike Williams that I really liked the amount of upside he had in that game, that he had some serious touchdown upside. Was I expecting what happened? Not to that extent. 7 catches, 76 yards, 2 touchdowns, another touchdown rushing for 19 yards. Huge game for Mike Williams. An enormous game for Mike Williams. But that was mostly in part due to Keenan Allen going out early in the game. He saw a lot of volume. Now, difficult matchup. Yes, they're going to be at home. They're going up against the Baltimore Ravens defense, which is a lot tougher than the Kansas City defense that they faced last week. But really, we don't know the status of Keenan Allen yet. If Keenan Allen sits, Mike Williams will still have some upside and could be a solid play here in Week 16. You need to pay attention to the practice reports and injury reports. Let's see if Keenan's going to play. Actually, regardless, even if Keenan does play, I still like the upside of Mike Williams once again, and he's somebody that I would possibly take a chance on as a flex play here in Week 16, and he's still only owned in less than 30% of leagues. Not a bad pickup. All right, can we be real for a second about the tight end position? There's not a whole lot out there really worth a crap. It's really hard to find a tight end unless you have somebody named Kittle, Ebron, Ertz, or Kelsey, and even they've been inconsistent here at times recently. There's nothing else out there that is a safe play for the tight end position. You got Chris Herndon and Gerald Everett owned in less than 50% of leagues. They all have potential. But at this point, we're picking guys. It's like playing blackjack blindfolded. We have no idea. You take a chance on one of these guys, you throw them in your lineup, you close your eyes, you cross your fingers, and you don't watch that game because more than likely you're going to be depressed watching it. Not a whole lot of great streaming options for the tight end position. But if I had to take a chance this week, it's Chris Herndon and Gerald Everett, and I'm just going to roll the dice. All right, those were my top pickups here for Week 16. Go out there, check your waiver wire, see if they're available. Hopefully they will be, and hopefully they can help you out here down the stretch. Really appreciate the support. Big things coming in 2019. Be sure to check out the rest of this week's videos, all the start sits for each of the other positions. Looking forward to talking to you guys. Have a great rest of your week. We'll talk to you later. Thanks. Bye.